Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Fix Your Own Drill. For background, my dad worked as a diamond driller for many years. When I say diamond, that's what the drill was coated with to cut through rock. They were actually mining gold. Diamond is super hard. Part of being a driller is fixing your own equipment. When your job site is a mile underground, down some dark tunnel, you learn to be self-sufficient. My dad has always been a mechanical genius. He can visualize the inside workings of an engine, just by observation. He's the guy who will listen to your car for 3 minutes and go, "It's X." Then you replace part X, and magically all the lights on your dash disappear. So this is a story of unwritten rules. As a miner, it was part of the deal that you fix your equipment. At the time of this story, the miners were getting paid by the foot. If you were productive and drilled so many feet, you get good wages. If you were a slacker, you didn't get much. The perils of piecework, good sometimes, awful at others. The catch, you need to upkeep your drill. Ain't nobody taking the cage, slang for the underground elevator, down half a mile into the dark, walk down some forsaken tunnel, just to replace the bolt that was holding your drill bit in place. That upkeep was 100% on the driller. Fair or not, that's the way it was. So the unwritten rule was, you break it, you fix it. Nobody wants to spend their whole shift fixing things when they could be drilling and making money. Enter the cross shift. So each drill was usually manned by 2 people, they were cross shifts. One guy's works 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., the other, 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. That way, the equipment is always running. No downtime. Cross shift was mechanically challenged, would drill all day, wreck the equipment, and it would be fixed by my dad next shift. Win-win for cross shift. Thing is, Dad had to fix the drill to make money. It was piecework, as you remember. So he started getting frustrated. It's hard to make money when you are always repairing things. Extra crappy when it wasn't even your fault to start with. After probably too long, and too many ignored requests, yes, he talked to supervisor, no, it didn't help anything, Dad found a workaround. He would show up to the drill, fix it as fast as possible, then drill like a boss for his shift. When money-making time was over, he would break the drill in the exact way it was broken when he started the shift, forcing the cross shift to pull his weight and fix the equipment, or face a shift of not making money. Mysteriously, the drilling equipment started being repaired before Dad showed up to work. Almost like cross shift figured out he had to fix his problems himself. Funny how that happens sometimes. The next one is titled, I'm not too sick to go to work. Fine, I'll just get sent home instead. So this happened recently, a couple weeks ago. And just so no one freaks out, I got tested before I went to work that day. It was just a stomach bug. So I fell sick during the week. I still go to school, so I work on the weekends. I fell sick on Tuesday. It wasn't better by the weekend. I wasn't sick, I was sick. I felt like throwing up whenever I stood, and no medication seemed to help. I could barely eat anything without it coming back up. Needless to say, I was not well. So obviously when Saturday came and I wasn't better, I called out of work. Now for some backstory, this weekend was when we had a snowstorm and the roads were icy. We have 2 houses at the moment because we moved and haven't sold the old house yet. This is important because my car was in the garage of the old house, so it wouldn't get covered in snow. So my dad had to drive me. When Sunday hit, I didn't feel any better. But my dad began to guilt trip me. I've gone to work sick plenty of times, just tough it out. You're not that sick, you'll be fine. Your workplace relies on you. Now calling out sick for my workplace isn't a big deal, it's a grocery store. It's not like I'm the only person who could bag groceries, and on weekends it's easy to find someone to pick up a shift. But he kept guilting me and I said fine. Now I knew I could have just called out against his wishes, but I didn't. I knew I couldn't last the shift, and I knew he would be the one to deal with me. So he drove me to work after I got ready. And I made sure I had a big breakfast, even though it wasn't a good idea and it hurt my stomach to eat that much after basically having nothing for days. So he drove me to work and I started my shift. About an hour in I couldn't hold it, and in front of all of my managers I bolted from the register into the bathroom. I had all told them of my physical state before this. I was like Sonic running through the aisles to the back to make it in time. I threw up in the bathroom and thankfully made it to the toilet. My managers helped me and got me water. They of course didn't feel comfortable with me working still, so they sent me home. I called up my dad and told him I threw up and they didn't want me to work the rest of my shift. My dad was upset as he just got home because he ran errands before going home. My dad had to go back in his car after just getting home and had to drive and pick me up. My mum just made him breakfast, so by the time he picked me up and got home it was cold. Needless to say, he didn't complain to me about me being sick for the rest of the time I wasn't well. He was annoyed because I wasn't doing my shared house chores due to being sick. Next time, don't mess with the sick child who listens, reads malicious compliance stories. The next one is titled, Won't Pay for Drive Time? Fine, I'll unleash heck. This happened a couple years back at a retail store that has since closed down. I got the job only because I wanted extra money as a college student and it was super easy to do. Management was always bad, but this was the final straw of it all. To help track who is who in the story, me will be me, and HR, Human Resource Manager. For acronym sakes. This all started near that point in a job where you just know you'll either get fired, or quit because it's no longer worth it. However, I was seen as a fantastic worker since I did all the heavy lifting, shift coverages, and was very neat with making displays look perfect. There was only one supervisor who liked me, and the boss lady absolutely hated me. Well, the assistant regional general manager from corporate was going to stop by another location that was about an hour away from the location I worked at. I was asked by boss lady to go up there and work a day for them to help clean up the store and make it look as good as I did boss lady's store. I agreed, but forgot to ask if she was paying travel time. Laws for me were distance from my store's location to the other one plus distance back to the original store, which could be concluded from the original departure that morning plus clocked hours after clocking in at my location until I got back to the store, which was done by timing myself that morning all the way up to the other location equals state's required travel time. Well, I asked the only nice supervisor about it since she was going to, and did it before me. Hey, do we get travel time for this? Supervisor, I don't know, I never really asked and never really got any bonus pay, but I also don't really care. The day comes, I go to my store, clock in and head to the other location about an hour away. Worked the whole day making everything perfect. Next day I come to work and ask boss lady about travel time. Me, hey, boss lady, am I getting travel time? Boss lady, what? No. You were on clock the whole time, that's what you get paid. Enter malicious compliance. I was doing business law at the time and knew the travel time laws in my state, so I decided to see if HR knew them too. In secret I called the HR number on the back wall and left a message. Next day my phone is blasting off with calls while I'm in a class, so finally I call back. HR, hello, is this me? Me, yes, who is calling? HR, you left a voicemail for the old HR manager, why? Me, it's the number we have at the back in the store. Why do you ask? HR, well, I'm the new human resources manager and I've been in this position for the past month. Has your boss lady not posted my new number yet? It was required to be put up 24 hours after I was in the role. Me, no, the boss lady hasn't done anything back there. Also, I explained the travel time story and boss lady isn't offering travel time pay. Do I talk to you about it? HR, yes, I will look into this, and regional manager might call you later. Call ends, and the next day I get another call. Regional manager, is this me? I'm regional manager and I'm aware of the situation. Please know I will be taking care of this, and that you can get your travel time pay anytime once boss lady calls you. The call basically went like that and ends. Side note, I had already put in my 2 weeks before I reported boss lady, which was a week after travel time day. Few days go by and I finally get a call from work. Boss lady, come get your money. She hung up before I even got to say anything. Went in and got my money in cash from the till. Boss lady was upset as hell and the other supervisors were sour as heck. Luckily that was my last day too, and since putting in my 2 weeks she never scheduled me once. After I left, I found out a few months later upper management basically forced boss lady into retirement since rumors around work started spilling out from my bravery to talk up about her, and more people started ratting her and her minion supervisors out to HR. The last one is titled, "Give me a raise or replace me." Almost a decade ago I worked in a call center doing over-the-phone tech support. I worked there for almost 7 years until I was fired because the desk phone they issues me malfunctioned for 6 weeks straight despite my continued twice-a-week complaints. They didn't even try to appeal my unemployment either. Anyway, I started there in 2008 and by 2010 I had switched from a customer service role to a tech support role and then moved into a more senior tech support role, which did not come with extra pay. My job consisted primarily of calling customers back who had an issue that normal tech support was unable to resolve. If I had time, I was expected to help call back customers who left dissatisfied surveys as well. I was also given certain blocks of time during the week to monitor the interdepartmental chat room to help answer questions. I also had a lot of documentation to do to keep track of everything I did and said to a customer. I take pride in my work. Once I learned the ins and outs of the system, I became rather competitive. Each survey or escalation had an associated ticket. We were expected to close 60 tickets per month per person. This equated to just under 3 per days. In order to close a ticket, we either had to resolve their issue or at least note their additional survey feedback, escalate their issue to the corporate office to die. More on that later, or leave 3 voicemails over 3 days and send them an email. Once I was comfortable with what I was doing, my goal became not to close the most tickets, but to absolutely destroy everyone else in how many I got done. The minimum was 60 per month, and there were a couple people in our 12-person department who never broke 100 and were normally doing 50 to 70 a month. Most people were in the 100 to 200 range, a few sometimes getting up to 250. I regularly did 400 or more every month, for almost 3 years. I had days where I would make 75 phone calls a day. I also monitored the chat room, often more often than required, wrote articles for our internal database, helped our slowest members with paperwork, answered incoming frontline emails if they were behind, and had low-level agents directly transfer live customers to me rather than escalating them if I knew I could resolve their issue right away. Towards the end of that 3 years I also began helping out another department that dealt with customers who mailed their device in for repair. It wasn't that I was so much smarter than everyone or ridiculously good at troubleshooting, I am just organized and driven. When we had a slow month where almost nobody called us at all, I only did 125 tickets and read probably 7 hours a day. I read Stephen King's Dark Tower series in a week, entirely at work. The company I worked for, the one who signed my paychecks, was a contract company owned by a big multinational out of Canada. They took contracts from companies like DirecTV, Comcast, and USAA. I found out that the company I was doing contracted work for paid my company $35 per hour for my time, but I only saw $10.50 of that. I also was almost never allowed overtime, maybe 1 to 2 weeks a year for the entire 7 years. First-level leaders were salaried and, if they didn't work any overtime, made about $12.70. I heard that the next-level leader made about $60,000 a year and the building director double that. The company that made the product I was troubleshooting was like a dumpster fire. They sold a product that developed a hardware issue, which they knew was a hardware issue, but they forbid us from telling a customer that and instead told them that we were working on a software update. Despite being primarily in the USA, our website only offered user manuals in Spanish and the website developer claimed that it was impossible to add a new tab for user manuals to the website. A co-worker recoded the website, hosting new pages on a personal server and linking every outside link, like to another part of the website, in just 45 minutes and presented it to our corporate office. Our warranty only allowed for repair. We would not ship out a replacement device and would not provide any sort of loaner device. Minimum repair time was 3 weeks and the customer was responsible for shipping the device in, including paying for shipping and a box. If it got lost on the way, it wasn't our problem. Apparently our repair center decided that first in, first out wasn't a convenient system for processing the repairs, so they just pulled however they felt like it. I had the pleasure of calling customers who had mailed their device in over a year prior because it wouldn't even power on to tell them that it was now out of warranty and we no longer had any parts to repair it anyway, and would they like us to mail it back them? Now comes the malicious compliance. The first came in when the company tried to launch an in-house made data backup service. It was extremely poorly developed and failed miserably. Much better and free systems existed, and even if the company's system had worked flawlessly, it had no benefits that I could see. When we started receiving complaints that it was not working, our corporate office told us to just immediately escalate to them, don't even troubleshoot. I knew nothing was ever going to come of that, of letting cases just trickle in. I knew that corporate would just let them die. So I came in one day and I took all of the pending cases for issues with the backup service and entered them into the ticket service program. Now this is where it got really good. At the time, when you created a ticket, it would send you 3 emails by the time you had finished. That's before leaving notes or closing it, just entering information. I knew this, and I knew I could change the responsible person on the ticket from myself to the person at corporate in charge of this issue at the beginning instead of assigning it to them at the end. I entered 128 tickets for that issue alone that night. I was working second shift at the time. It only took me a few hours. I had plenty of time to do real work after that. That means the person at corporate who was supposed to handle these cases came into work the next day with over 350 new emails in their inbox. When I got to work the following day, I was told we were no longer escalating those issues and instead just telling customers that we were working on fixing it. Those customers never got called back, and the person at corporate later lost their job because they barely ever got anything done. My last malicious compliance came when they started letting people work from home. They did this to save on operating costs as they expanded the workforce. By moving associates to work from home, this was 2012, they didn't have to pay for electricity or as much bandwidth, etc. If you worked from home, you were issued a terminal and keyboard, mouse and a phone. You had to supply a monitor and the system was a virtual machine. When an opportunity came up to switch to work from home, I put in for it. They moved people in groups as they purchased new equipment. When they found out that I wanted to work from home, they tried to talk me out of it because I wouldn't be able to do escalations and surveys at home. I would have to be frontline tech support again. I asked if I could have a raise then. I was already topped out and knew I would never get a raise ever. They said no, so I chose to work from home. My main reason for working from home was actually money. I didn't get a pay cut and I was spending a lot of money on gas because I lived 25 miles from work and gas was over $4 a gallon at the time. Working from home was like a 50 cents per hour raise because I was spending $20 a week on gas. Working from home was also great for me because I could work in my pajamas and didn't waste over an hour driving to and from work. I never understood why they wouldn't let me do what I had been doing before from home. I had all the same tools at home as in the call center. When I left my old department to work from home, I was doing at least 25% of the work for the entire department. I was closing 400 and 500 tickets a month, and still wasting an hour or 2 every day. They ended up needing to move 3 people into the department to replace me. I stayed with the company for 3 years after that, mostly because the work was easy and I wasn't particularly motivated to find something better. I ended up getting fired in the end. Like I said, they issued me a desk phone. It was like a landline phone, but had an LCD screen with some configurable options on it, and you could plug in a headset, and it worked over the internet. About 6 weeks before I got fired, my phone started having an issue where it would drop calls. Normally, it would ring and you would press answer. But it started having an issue where it would ring once, or half a ring, or sometimes not ring at all, and then hang up on the customer. Sometimes it would then place me in a state where I couldn't take calls again until I pressed a button on the phone. I notified my supervisor immediately when it first happened and continued to do so twice a week over the next 2 weeks. Despite my repeated complaints, I was told to just watch it, and she refused to send me out a replacement. A week before I was fired, I was working on a day when my supervisor was not. A different supervisor saw that I was in this unavailable state, and despite me telling him that it was my desk phone and that it had been happening for weeks, insisted on giving me a formal verbal warning. When my supervisor came in the next day, she immediately called me and told me she was upgrading my verbal warning to a final written warning. The company, like many, had a 4-step system of verbal, written, final written warning, and then terminated. She gave no reason for why she was upgrading it to a final written. A few days later I noticed that one of my tools was not working correctly but managed to struggle through until lunchtime when I restarted my terminal. After lunch, when I restarted, I was unable to log back in. I immediately texted my boss. We had to clock out for lunch. I didn't want to be in more trouble and I didn't want to be underpaid either. I then called our help desk, but I was back on second shift, so it was after hours support and they were unable to help me. It was a Friday night and they said that normal help desk personnel wouldn't be available until Monday morning. I hung up and called my boss instead. It went to voicemail. I continued to try to reach out to my boss Saturday, Sunday, and Monday via text, phone, and email. I had been scheduled to work all weekend. I normally had days off in the middle of the week but couldn't do so as I was unable to log into my terminal or phone. Monday morning I called the help desk again and was told that I wasn't part of the company anymore, but there was no reason listed as to why, and there was obviously nothing they could do. Ask the help desk. My boss finally reached out to me on Wednesday, via text, and said that I had been fired for call avoidance. I filed for unemployment. It was denied, but when I appealed, the company didn't even have someone call into the phone interview, so I won by default. I was on unemployment for 6 weeks before starting at my current job. Since then I have gotten 2 promotions and am currently making more than double what I made at my old job. To top it all off, last year the company lost a class action lawsuit for making people sign into their terminals and open software before clocking in. They didn't want to pay people for those 5 or so minutes a day, and they lost millions of dollars. I got a check for a few $100 out of it, which was a nice touch. Thanks for listening.